Well, welcome to this Solon expert witness video on a really important subject, which is professional indemnity insurance. And I'm delighted to welcome Gary Horswell of Ntegrity, who is a specialist in this area. Gary, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I spent most of my career working in professional negligence insurance for a wide range of professions, really, Mark. Started out surveyors, construction, and then moved on to financial services, lawyers, accountants, and of course experts as well, which we've been working with for the last 14, 15 years.
So yeah, I know you've been working with Solon for at least 14 years now, which is great. Let's start with the basics. What is professional indemnity insurance?
Okay. Well, in simple terms, it's a liability insurance policy that sets out to protect the policyholder in the event that they're pursued for some breach of professional duty.
And of course, experts, since the case of Jones and Caney, are liable both in contract and negligence for the opinion proffered. So it is really important, isn't it?
Very much so, very much so. It's important to bear in mind that without the insurance, an individual professional in any walk of life could be exposed to risk from their own resources.
So they might need to sell the house.
Potentially, yes, it has happened.
And now a lot of expert witnesses will say, well, actually, I've got insurance for my day job. Why would I need cover for my expert witness work? Isn't that covered?
In some cases, it may well be. Policy wordings do vary. There's a lot of similarity, but there are a lot of differences.
So they need to check their policies very carefully.
We need to look at the small print very carefully.
How do insurers assess the risk for a particular expert?
Well, they first of all take into account the type of profession that's involved. Medical professions that feature quite prominently are considered to differ in risk terms compared to, say, an architect or an engineer. But beyond that, it's really a question of looking at the scale of the business in terms of the fee income, whether there have been any claims. Those are the main drivers.
And what risks does the policy cover?
Predominantly, it's professional negligence, but there are some other risks that are picked up. Things like breach of confidentiality, breach of copyright, defamation, sometimes loss of documentation if that's key. But most of the cover is aimed at the pure professional negligence risk.
Now, over the past 2 or 3 years, there's been several quite large claims against expert witnesses, cost orders, for example. How have these matters affected the premiums payable?
Well, up until now, premiums haven't moved a great deal in recent times. Certainly, insurers are aware of these cases, and we are noticing more involvement or certainly more PI claims where experts' roles are being mentioned. So it's on the radar. Insurers will reserve judgment, really, Mark, until they start to see claims coming in against experts when payments are made. But at the moment, no major sea change in attitude, thankfully.
What happens if an individual expert, the amount of work they do as expert witnesses increases? Do they need to notify the insurer, and will that affect the premium payable?
There is a natural cycle with these policies anyway, in as much as each year policyholders have to update their insurer, and that's the point at which you would normally tell your underwriter that you've increased the business substantially. The premium, though, is calculated on the past year's actual fee income. So the insurers do tend to naturally have the opportunity to review the risk at each renewal, but there is no requirement. If business is moving up by 20%, 30%, 40%, there's no requirement in the middle of the policy year to tell the insurer that that is happening.
I see, because it will be reflected at the annual renewal.
Absolutely right.
Of course, many experts will be trained in their day job. There's the day job, and then there's the work as the expert witness. They're trained to be a doctor or whatever it is, and continuing professional development. How do insurers view training for the expert witness work?
Well, bearing in mind that it's kind of taken as a given that anyone who puts themselves forward as an expert is pretty experienced and knowledgeable in their respective fields. I think insurers generally would welcome any kind of risk improvement, but the insurers we work with have certainly taken on board the value and benefit of having that training as an expert. That's the missing piece, really. And I think what Solon has supplied over the years, insurers have been very impressed by, and in fact, they've translated that into some significant premium discounts.
And the final question is, experts are often concerned if they retire, for example, how long does the cover last for an expert witness under these policies?
Well, it's one of the fundamental differences, for example, for the medical professions, where perhaps run-off cover is approached slightly differently. Typically, professional indemnity policies have to be maintained in force for as long as there is exposure, and that's more of a legal question than an insurance question.
Sure.
The key thing to bear in mind is as soon as you let a professional indemnity policy expire or lapse or decide not to renew it, if a claim comes in later, then if there is no cover, there's no live policy, then that is uninsured. That is why you have to keep the policy rolling on what we call a run-off basis to cover that diminishing risk.
So just to sum up, professional indemnity insurance for expert witness work is really important, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't, personally speaking, I wouldn't practice without insurance of this nature. We live in such a litigious society nowadays that it's essential, in my view.
And people can find you as Ntegrity or via the Solon website.
Absolutely.
Well, Garrett, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for your wonderful work with us, and thanks for your explanations today. Thank you very much for watching as well.